At the beginning of the film, we are introduced to a woman named Rebecca, whose husband is Mason. That day, they were arguing because Mason refused to come to dinner with their children. The reason was that Mason was busy with work. Not wanting to make matters worse, Mason ultimately chose to leave. Since marrying Mason, Rebecca's life has changed drastically. He has everything, even part of the company's assets have been given to Rebecca. They now have 3 children, Jessica, Aeon, and Hung. That day, Rebecca met with her friends, where they talked about themselves. Even though they were in their 50s, they still had youthful spirits, and they were still experienced in intimacy. Rebecca's friends also knew that Rebecca and her husband were having problems, and it turned out that they hadn't been intimate for a long time. And what's worse, it turned out that during their intimacy, Rebecca never reached the climax. That day, Rebecca revealed everything. Despite her embarrassment, she tried to share her feelings. The next day, they met again, and their conversation continued to revolve around making out. Rebecca's friend even suggested that she make out alone to achieve what she wanted. However, Rebecca refused, saying it felt strange to her. The only way was for Rebecca to hire a make-out service, pay, and her wish would be granted. On the other hand, Valentina, a make-out service provider, sent one of her colleagues to meet Rebecca and agree on a time and place for the meeting. The next day, Rebecca was waiting at a hotel. She seemed anxious until a young woman named Paris arrived. Rebecca initially thought Paris had the wrong room, but everything turned out as agreed. However, Rebecca was surprised to find that it was a young woman, not one her own age. She refused and asked Paris to leave. A few days later, Rebecca met her friends again, where she told them what had happened the previous day. But her friend suggested that Rebecca try anyway, and she'd see what would happen. Long story short, Rebecca tried again and met Paris for the second time. Although the meeting went smoothly at first, Rebecca ultimately couldn't make it and decided to leave. What Rebecca didn't know was that Paris was one of the best Valentina's foster children. However, it turned out that Rebecca had left her ring there, and Rebecca had no choice but to retrieve it. The conversation continued, and Paris began to approach Rebecca and almost got intimate. However, Rebecca came to her senses and decided to leave immediately and give Paris some money. A few days later, Rebecca made an appointment with Paris at the same place. But this time, it was different. Rebecca had gained confidence, and in the end, Rebecca and Paris became intimate until Rebecca got what she wanted. Because she was so engrossed in it, Rebecca forgot that she and her children had already agreed to have dinner together that night. As a result, Rebecca's children were disappointed and cancelled their dinner out. As the days went by, Rebecca and Paris saw each other more often, repeating what had happened the previous day. Rebecca was truly happy, and she also shared her feelings with her friends. Rebecca began to lose herself, even forgetting her responsibilities as a mother and wife. However, that day, one of Rebecca's children found a doctor's note, revealing that Rebecca had been diagnosed with cancer. Rebecca was at a loss as to how to explain this to her children. Even Mason, it turned out, already knew about Rebecca's condition. She wanted their relationship to be restored to its former glory. In the end, they both admitted their mistakes and forgave each other. Despite this, Rebecca still saw Paris and, of course, kissed them repeatedly. Not only Rebecca, but Paris also had a dark past. She used to have a boyfriend, but he died in an accident she caused. Paris felt deep regret, and to overcome this, she took up a new hobby, painting. Rebecca and Paris had been completely open with each other, sharing everything they felt and experienced. However, a few weeks later, Rebecca was pronounced dead from an illness. She left behind all her past, both happy and sad. And finally, the film ended.